Betsy and Thomas here for the American Intelligence Media. Today, Thomas, I have only 4 tweets. They were important tweets of July 7th, 2018. The first one reads, Twitter is getting rid of fake accounts at a record pace. Will that include the failing New York Times and propaganda machine for Amazon, the Washington Post, who constantly quote anonymous sources that, in my opinion, don't exist? They will both be out of business in 7 years.
Well, these 4 tweets are very important, Betsy, and thank you so much for asking myself and others in the conclave to prepare these, because it is an honor.
Well, correction, I didn't ask anybody else in the conclave. I asked you because I know you will take us to the depths of what these tweets really mean.
Well, that's true, but some of them require research, and thank you to conclave members. We also want to officially declare that Jim Jordan is a conclave member, because we are adopting him because he's helping lead this fight. You know, we're in a civil war, and the civil war is to get back the republic, the constitutional republic of the United States of America. And many people are working with your team and the conclave, and it gets bigger every day. And we just want to recognize the fact that people are fighting this. Now, Twitter is a private company. Twitter can do any darn thing it wants, and it can put anything it wants in its user agreement. And if you sign it, well, you agree to it.
Like being part of the theft of the very platform that made it possible from Leader Technologies?
Well, that's where they, in fact, commit a crime. The fact that they think that they can even offer a user agreement on what they say is open source material, which was not open source. It was stolen source material, stolen from Leader Technologies. We've shown so many times, Leader Technology. And what I'm saying here is Twitter and Amazon, the New York Times, and the Washington Post. Is there anything that tells any of those groups of people to stop being fake news, liars, yellow journalism, horrible propaganda? No. There is one tiny act, decency in broadcasting. They break it every day. Nobody does anything about it. So what are these? These are propaganda tools for the far left, and the far left has now declared themselves to be anarchists. They declared themselves to be fascists. There is no Democratic Party anymore. Bernie showed that. If you don't sway very far to the left, to the point of literally going out and demanding crazy things like the 1% needs to give everybody else their money so that the others don't have to work anymore. This is absurd. Anything Bernie and any socialist ever told you, including the new lady, Cortez, can't come to pass. So this is a war against who? Bezos. He's warning Bezos again. Either you stop the yellow propaganda or I'm going to go after you for monopoly. That's what he just said here. And he said that it won't exist in 7 years because all he has to do is whisper the word RICO, racketeering, to these news agencies, which they know that they're printing false materials. They've admitted it. They've had to retract, 133 times? Retractions, that nobody ever sees the retractions. But what is really going on here? On Twitter, thousands of accounts are just dropped. And they're conservative accounts. So what he's saying is, yes, he knows this is going on. Yes, he knows it's a private company. He knows all about companies. You see, because he's a businessman. He knows there's nothing he can do, but he also knows that he makes Twitter. If he left Twitter, Twitter would collapse, probably, because they're so blatant with what they're doing. Facebook also. Notice that in all the trouble with Facebook, its stock goes up. That's because it's fake, folks. Those mega Silicon Valley stocks, those are all fake. Who's driving them? Who drives Amazon? That would be the money that they made off of the government for using their cloud services. Otherwise, Amazon would fold. Amazon, if they didn't get a discount with postal services, they would fold. And if you went after them for RICO, they would fold.
And go to jail.
And go to jail.
Are you talking about Big Bezos in jail?
Yeah.
Yeah. We can make
That's
this happen, people.
And these monopolies, the head people in it, who usually are cardboard cutout, soy boy, beta males, they didn't do anything to create the company. They were simply a figurehead, and it's the government that was behind them. And in many cases, it was DARPA. And in all cases, anything that's socialized in the social network and can be scalable to the whole world, is stolen. It's stolen material. So at any point that he wants, all he has to do is pick up Leader Technology, write a check to Leader Technology, and that would force then agencies to find out why he recognizes the Miller Act and that Leader Technology actually did the real work that Twitter says they did, that Amazon said they did, that Facebook, that all of them, Gmail, anything where you have scalability. In other words, almost anything on the internet is stolen, and Trump, it keeps telling them, and he's warning them. He just now told them, he's never said this, you'll be dead in 7 years. And the reason is he knows he's going to be in office for 7 more years. And he knows that he's using them. He doesn't really want them dead. He wants them to reveal who they are. Twitter's revealing who they are, and he's calling them out on it, saying, yes, you removed conservative accounts. You did not even remove radical Islamic fascists from your accounts, but you will remove conservatives.
Well, it says here that it's getting rid of fake accounts at a record pace.
That's what they call them, fake accounts. That's a lie. Those are conservative accounts.
Okay.
And we see this because people have come on and said their Twitter was canceled overnight, no reason. And these are people who've been on it for a long time. There's a war on Twitter right now.
Well, also, it's not just the scalability you're looking at. Any place you have where you log in, you have to do a login, you are using Leader Technologies, proprietary, software? Yes. And you are participating in that theft. And this is why we keep hammering on that we need to make this right. And when we do, all of the people that were associated with IBM Eclipse Foundation who stole that technology from Michael McKibben at Leader Technologies is going to have to come to Jesus meeting. I mean, yes.
China is paying billions of dollars in fines for stealing intellectual property. That is nothing compared to what IBM Eclipse Foundation did. That's trillions of dollars. Trillions of dollars, and that's just in America. That isn't how it spread. If you added what spread to South America, to China, to all the rest of the world, it would be even more than that. So what we're talking about is the theft of intellectual property, and it's disturbing that these people wield their left-wing, their left-wing supposed progressive agendas through their private companies. But because they have a monopoly, why do they have a monopoly? Because they were created by DARPA and ARPA and In-Q-Tel. Just go back and look this up, and you can see that even the venture capital money that came in, even the initial investors are all the same people who are in all of them. It's the same group that is also attempting to prosecute Trump in Washington, D.C. It's Mueller, it's Comey, it's Rosenstein. I know, it's hard to believe. It's Bill and Hillary. It's Crocker. It's the same group of people, folks. And why? Because they got control of the intellectual property. They got control of the patents. And so Twitter, someone simply needs to review Twitter's patents back to the supposed open source code and then ask somebody, where's the open source code? Where'd it come from? Then all those companies collapse, literally. And all it takes is for Trump to sign one check to Leader Technologies under the Miller Act.
And don't worry, they will reconfigure in a different way. I mean, it won't be the end of this special way that we communicate over cyberspace, but we do need to get real, and we need to get honest.
Illegal surveillance. Dan Coates put forth a proposal to stop illegal surveillance of all Americans. It's happening, folks. It's happening, but you don't see it happening, and it's happening behind the scenes. Trump is going to go to the source. He's not going to try to take people to court like Facebook, like in Europe, billions of dollars of lawsuits for basically stealing your privacy. Oh, now there's no privacy whatsoever, no free speech in Europe because Soros's truth machine has taken over there. And what we're seeing in America is an attempt for Google, Eric Schmidt, to do the same here. So we've talked about this again and again. Google's initiative already in place. The Digital News Initiative, it is basically the Ministry of Truth, but for the wrong people. And so what we really need here is to understand that Trump is warning these people. Either they stop it, or he's simply going to take them down. And when he means gone in 7 years, out of business, he means like we won't even remember that they existed in 7 years. We can replace Google. That's no problem. That's a snap of a finger. Leader Technologies can come in and simply give the rights for others to expand these things or do it themselves. We'd be right back on business the next day if this happened. And the people who stole these things, well, they'd all turn on each other because they'd all admit that they put the back doors in, which is illegal. They're all surveilling everyone, which is illegal. They lie about it. They sell it to everyone, which is illegal. They spy on you, which is illegal. No, private companies can't spy on you. The government is allowed to legally because of the changing in the National Defense Authorization Act that Obama created. But Twitter is not allowed to spy on you. Neither is Facebook. That's why I tell you, Facebook, Google, YouTube, Gmail, those are all military driven. That's where they came from. That's what they're still doing. They don't make the money they say they do. Those are lies. And if anyone would look into it, they'd see that. Does Trump know this? Yes. Can he collapse Facebook? Not unless he has the replacement in hand. Can he collapse Google? Not unless he wants to destroy the world economy that's on the internet. So we have to be careful about these things. But what I'm telling you is he is fully aware of everything we just said.
Okay, the next tweet, and this one is a biggie. Big decision will soon be made on our next Justice of the Supreme Court. And I just want to say, I'm so tired of the whining that I see constantly in the news about the Supreme Court justice. Hey, people, elections have consequences. Donald Trump can choose who he wants.
It's going to be a MAGA Supreme Court by the time he leaves and then his follower gets the next 8 years. It'll be nothing but a MAGA Supreme Court. It'll be just so beautiful. But, you know, when it is already partisan and when the whole thing is a political game, what do we expect? There's no justice. That's fake justice. If you know what they're going to vote before you put them on the Supreme Court, what is the point of even sending them a question? We know what the answer is going to be.
Well, look at John Roberts. He actually held Facebook stock and then did the ruling on Facebook and said, no, Leader Technologies. Facebook has its patent fair and square. Can you believe it? Talk about one compromised Supreme Court justice.
I say that if you are on the Supreme Court and you think you can rewrite the Constitution, that is treasonous action, that basically you are a treasonous war actor against America. You are a criminal, and you're sitting on the Supreme Court. To think that you can rewrite with your opinion, and you're really, in most cases, very little experience in law, and especially experience in considering the effects of the laws that they pass. And so all it is a political sounding board for political appointees. And it is absurd, and I hope it all becomes Red Hat MAGA, and that we can then perhaps not bend to the right, no, bend to the Constitution and say we need to go back to the Constitution. That 4 of those justices voted against the constitutional empowerment of the executive to protect our borders and to delimit who comes into this country as an immigrant or as a visitor or whatever. That has been the way it's been since the Constitution was created. For 4 of them to vote against that, those 4 need to be taken out and basically punished as if they are war criminals.
Okay, the next one, and these 2 are so powerful. Do you want me to read them together or one at a time?
One at a time. They're too big.
Public opinion has turned strongly against the rigged witch hunt and the special counsel because the public understands that there was no collusion with Russia, so ridiculous, that the 2 FBI lovers were a fraud against our nation, and that the only collusion was with the Democrats.
Now, he keeps saying these things, but these 2 tweets have set the world on fire in the last day. There are entire articles that just discuss one of these or 2 of them. And they are so powerful because what he is implying here, and this is what the mainstream media will pick up on this. I'm not listening to them, but I can guarantee you, because they look for any tiny little chink in the wall. They look, or in his armor, they look for the slightest weakness. So what is he actually saying here? And this is what might go beyond some people's understanding. He is saying the rigged witch hunt, Mueller's special investigation, and then he refers to the special counsel, right? The rigged witch hunt, let's call that Crossfire Hurricane. And why? Because he mentions the 2 lovers who ran the rigged witch hunt. What he's doing is extending back the rigged witch hunt brand the moniker he put on that, from the special counsel all the way back to Peter Strzok, who was the first person chosen for the interagency group when Crossfire Hurricane was started, when the official cover-up. Remember, that's a cover-up. It started back in January with the Senate Intelligence Committee, Mark Warner, trying to get a meeting with Christopher Steele before Christopher Steele was even hired by the FBI to continue what they had as Sidney Blumenthal's and Cody Shearer's fake dossier, which was already created by Hillary. Hillary created her own fake dossier. It wasn't good enough. She gave it to the FBI. But that was only after she told Victoria Nuland to create a fake Russian cover to go after the Republicans for being connected to Russians, and specifically Trump, because they knew that Trump was fulfilling the prophecy that was in the 17 intelligence communities report, a 5-year report of what's going to happen in the future called the Paradox of Progress. And we've referred to it again and again. It predicts Hillary, it predicts her entire campaign, it predicts Bernie, it predicts Trump, it predicts what Hillary was going to do. And it says it's a paradox because we don't know if Hillary's going to get in. It literally tells you in there that they pretty much knew and that they were at their wits' end because Trump got in. So what did they have to do? They started in January. They actually started December 15th, 2015, because that's when they made the plan, because that's when they found out they were breached in the Democratic National Committee. So this goes all the way back to that. So Trump has now pushed the envelope all the way back to July 15th.
Is it January or July? Because you mentioned January.
No, the official time is around July that Crossfire Hurricane started. That was the cover-up.
Okay.
But Comey had already started 28 treasonous acts, which we put into an article. You can search and look up that article, 28.
Of course, now that you've mentioned it, I will have it in the link in the description box.
Yes, because Comey, what he did, he was proud to do what he was doing. He didn't even hide it. It was in the news. It was in the news. Remember when he had Felix Sater have a setup meeting with Michael Cohen, and then Felix Sater went to the press and said, I gave a letter to Michael Cohen, and he gave it to Trump, and in it it said how we could stop the sanctions with Russia, and I am the colluder. Felix Sater, who is a FBI plant of Comey, and Comey directed him, tried to set up Michael Cohen from the beginning. Before the dossier, tried to set up Michael Cohen as the bagman to receive money in Prague, a city he had never gone to. And who was the money from? It was 3 big bankers from Alpha Bank in Russia was supposedly giving to Trump. That's the collusion, folks. How come not one word is talked about that those 3 Russian bankers are suing Christopher Steele because of the lies in the dossier? And so is Alexei Gubarev. The person that he mentions was the hacker of the DNC. You see, people won't look at the content of that dossier, or you could rip it up into many pieces. I would love to give me anyone you want me to debate, and I will debate them. That would be James Clapper, give me Brennan, give me Comey, give me Rosenstein, give me Christopher Wray, give me anyone.
They're not going to come to you.
I will rip them to pieces
apart
with the facts that have already come to light, that are open source, that they have admitted are true. For instance, the collusion money. It was on October 30th that Franklin Furor from Slate, a news agency, released his long and very expensive report that he accidentally came across the connection between the Russian bankers paying Trump through the Trump Tower servers. We all heard this.
We saw the little nice charts they had to show the pings and everything. Looks so nice. And by the way, why are you calling Slate a news agency? They're just as much a piece of propaganda as any of these others that Trump mentions in this tweet.
That is correct. They're a piece of garbage. They're a rag. They're propaganda. But it doesn't matter. He's got a lot of attention before, and they knew he'd get a lot of attention now. He had university people study this, create the charts before he released it. It was supposed to be released as an October surprise to keep Trump from being elected, because by the time they checked into it, they'd find out that it wasn't true. It doesn't matter as long as you can affect the vote. So it's called an October surprise. You try to use opposition research to really put the other candidate down. So the dossier came out at that time. The references to the Trump Tower server came out. The references before about Michael Cohen was already had a letter trying to get sanctions. They're trying to pin it on George Papadopoulos. So these were multiple FBI counterintelligence operations. These were not investigations. There were no crimes. They were inventing crimes. They were trying to frame Trump, frame Papadopoulos, frame Sam Clovis, frame anyone that they could in the Trump, whoever came anywhere near Trump, so that they could not only spy on him, which was being done by not only America, but by Brits. Robert Hannigan of the British equivalent to the National Security Agency, the NSA, was using the NSA to spy on Trump at Trump Towers. Admiral Rogers came and told Trump that. That's the reason within 2 days, he moved out of there to his golf course and moved his headquarters out of Trump Towers, because it was 100% bugged. By who? Not the Americans. It was bugged by our British friends, one of the Five Eyes, people we trust, just like the State Department, under orders of Hillary Clinton and Victoria Nuland, set up, and of course this would have been with John Kerry's assistance, set up the connection with Alexandra Chalupa to create the false Manafort $27 million he stole from the World Bank through Ukraine. Lie. Then it set up Manafort for other crimes that go all the way back to 2004. So he's in solitary confinement for...
He's a political prisoner just as much as Tommy Robinson or even Julian Assange.
What he did was he did what we told you they would catch him doing, because we knew this because he'd been under investigation for years. He did less of a crime than the Pakistani mystery man that Trump refers to, the greatest foreign espionage spying on the Congress and on the Democratic National Committee that has ever happened in history. Totally swept under the rug, by the way. What's happening with him? Oh, no, nothing. But what's happening with Manafort? And what did Manafort do? Let me tell you what he did. I told you this before he was ever charged. I told you he would be charged. He moved some money he made legally, from an offshore account without paying taxes on it back into America to save his daughter's New York property. We told you this. This is going to be the only crime. But what do you see? 15 charges of wire fraud, theft, bank fraud, lying to the... Why? They needed some indictments. And so they got indictments from low-hanging fruit that had been there for years. They wanted Manafort out of the picture. He's a president maker. He helped Trump get through the Electoral College as his campaign manager because he has political power that is astounding. He's like John Podesta, but he's the kind of the opposite. He knows other things. Podesta sets people up with blackmail, and he helped the Democrats, but he also was an advisor even to Republicans because he has blackmail on everybody, John Podesta does. Is he going to jail? No. Judge Leon, his good friend, is protecting him. So the money that was spent illegally...
John Leon, whose best friend? Make sure we
John
clarify
Podesta
that.
And Judge Leon are best of friends.
Yes.
And Leon is looking at the case of Fusion GPS, which was paid $12 million by Podesta and Hillary from the Democratic National Committee and Hillary Victory Fund to spy on, create opposition research against Trump. But the problem with that is they used foreign agents. They used Stefan Halpern. They used Joseph Mifsud. They used Alexander Downer. They used Richard Dearlove. They used Anthony Wood. They used, of course, Christopher Steele and his partner. They used all these people right up to Jeffrey Patty, right smack dab into the Privy Council of the Queen. They set this up with their standard deal, which is when it's political and you're in power, like this was remember, this is all Obama. Every speck of this is Obama. He approved of every single speck of this. I told you when the first meetings happened in January of 2016 with Obama, we have previous statements which cannot be found in open source now because they're gone, of meetings in the White House where stupid Comey is saying, okay, we got to get on the ball. We've been told by the Democratic National Committee we have to create a Russian scenario that can be placed on Trump and the Republican Party, but Trump specifically. So they sat there and concocted it. And what did he say in January? I'll write an editorial to the New York Times where I always leak everything. And now we know it's an institutionalized leak to his best bunk buddy friend, who he now claims is a lawyer. And why didn't he ever get any leak indictments against him, Comey? So we know these things happened, and now we have Susan Rice who says, oh yeah, we met in the White House and we talked all about the dossier. He had to be informed, and now we have Strzok and Page saying the White House wants to be informed every step of the way. The White House is telling us what to do.
Well, Obama couldn't have done this without the participation of these folks you just named from the United Kingdom, including Queen Elizabeth II.
Unfortunately, yes, Queenie. You better run and hide, and giving the crown to Charles is just going to be the biggest mess in modern British history.
Oh my gosh, he's such a soy boy. They're taking him out, verbally and through the work that we're doing is going to be so easy.
The Queen has the reserve to use her Privy Council to do her dirty work. Charles doesn't. He's already demonstrated that. He tries to get involved in politics, and he thinks he's the king even before he was the king. How much of a megalomaniac is he going to become when he becomes the king of all of this that we're describing to you?
Or worse is if they pass it down to the other soy boy in line, William.
Fraud against the nation. What he means is a coup d'etat. It's fraud against the nation because he's saying that the election was a fraud. Because all of those things that they attacked him with, and I can list the 28 of them if you need to hear them again, but the entire Obama administration, for instance, Susan Rice unmasking. What about that crime? Is anyone addressing that crime? Well, that was one of the crimes, and that was her. That was just her doing her thing.
Yeah, but the courts are all rigged, so, what do we expect until we get this thing cleaned up? These people are going to skate.
And, the Democrats, who I like to call the demon rats, who the anarchist party, the party of extreme open borders, the party of crime, the party of basically you don't have to be a citizen to vote, is actually being attacked. And Trump is attacking them. And as it comes to light, because as they attacked him, remember, Giuliani came in and Joe DiGenevo. And what happened? Within 1 week, Rod Rosenstein came out and said, I just want to give you an update. Oh, the only friggin' update he's given us. And why? Because Giuliani, who knows the dirt on everybody, went over and threatened Mueller, who knows that Mueller was part of 911, and Giuliani knows what happened in 911. And Trump said he's going to bring out the truth. Giuliani knows. Giuliani was played on that day, and he knows that Mueller came and covered it up. And that's a fact. You'd have to be an idiot not to know that Mueller is one of the biggest criminals in America. He went and he said to Mueller, I'm going to bring that out to light if you don't put a lid on this. Within days, literally, within weeks of DiGenevo, within days of Giuliani, Rosenstein, Rat Rosenstein comes out and says...
He does look like a rat, too.
He is a rat.
He's just a nasty old rat.
He's a demon rat.
Yeah. Ooh.
And he is a Democrat, and his wife is even worse.
Oh, Lisa Barsumian? Oh, she is just so corrupt. I'm telling you, her corruptness is so huge. I don't want to get into it. I'll put a link in the description box. You can read for yourself.
She's represented Mueller. She's represented Comey. Lisa Barsomian, the wife of Rat Rod Rosenstein. She's represented Clinton. She's, again and again, she's represented every major evil person in D.C. and has won every single case. Isn't that a coincidence? But you don't hear a word about her, do you? You don't hear that, then he should have recused himself from looking into Russian collusion, because the Russian collusion was with Hillary and the Democrats, as Trump points out here. And the fraud that Trump is referring to is the election meddling, trying to blame it on the Russians, and actually using Brits' Strategic Communications Laboratory to control the Global Engagement Center, which is run by the Department of Defense, which Obama made legal. That's the meddling. Then they tried to literally assassinate him repeatedly from the time he's been president-elect and president. And now, remember this, that the entire Obama attempts, and there are many of them, to get Trump to not win and Hillary to win, it's very complicated, but they are all treasonous, because the second he was elected president, Now it became an attack against the U.S. Constitution.
And also with the Queen. If the Queen was involved with her Privy Council and all those folks over there in the United Kingdom to participate in the overthrow of Donald Trump, they are not our friends.
Oleg Deripaska, George Soros, Leonid Blavatnik, on and on and on, Alexandra Chalupa. We're talking about foreign agents who were used by Obama's administration, massively paid. Stephen Halpern was paid probably, we know, at least $500,000 to run his campaign to try to frame Papadopoulos, frame Carter Page, frame Sam Clovis, anyone that he could. He has been an agent of America, and they always go and get dual citizenship so that then they can not legally ever answer to any of their crimes, and that's what Stephen Halper is. And this is an attack against America, and after President-elect Trump became elected, and when he became president, it is now an active coup d'etat, and that's what he's saying. The fraud has now become a coup d'etat, and when is there going to be any justice out of the Department of Justice?
Okay, the final tweet. The rigged. Okay, the final tweet for today. The rigged witch hunt, originally headed by FBI loverboy Peter S. for 1 year, and now 13 angry Democrats, should look into the missing DNC server, Crooked Hillary's illegally deleted emails, the Pakistani fraudster, Uranium One, Podesta, and so much more. It's a Democrat con job. And Thomas, I'm going to let you go on this, but I just noticed that in both of these tweets, he keeps talking about the FBI lovers, and I always say, I don't see any signs of it. I'm going to need to see every single one of the tweets, unredacted. I can handle it. I'm an adult. I have seen sexually explicit material before. I want to be shown that they're lovers and there wasn't anything else going on in there like any kind of assassination attempt plans.
There were, and you'll never get those, and that's what the fight is right now between the Congress and the DOJ and FBI. The fact that they were lovers and using government-issued phones on government lines where they're supposed to be doing government business, every speck of every communication belongs to the government. But we have the Department of Justice saying, oh no, Stephen Boyd wrote the letter for Rat Rod Rosenstein and for Rat Jeff Sessions and said, we're not going to give you any personal communications between them. We're not going to give you any of the attachments on those text messages. We're going to remove all senior executive service members' names, and we're going to remove and redact any names that we think are part of that need to be redacted. So we've only seen the tip of the iceberg. And so when you talk about the lovers, he's making fun of that. And every time, Betsy, you get all upset about that. He's triggering you, just like he's trying to trigger them. They were lovers. How could they be using their government lines to carry on an illicit sexual relations when both of them were married, and that then means they lose their security clearance? They have to go through lie detector tests. Remember, now it's come out. Peter Strzok, Andrew McCabe, and others failed their lie detector tests throughout all of these things. Okay, then they must be relieved of duty. That's the way it works, okay? I was in the NSA. Do you think if I failed a lie detector test, they'd let me back into the top secret security clearance facility? That's stupid, and that's insane, and no one believes that. No one could possibly believe any of that nonsense. So right here is what we said. He was saying it before, now he's saying it explicitly. The rigged witch hunt, originally headed by Loverboy Peter. Okay, Peter headed Crossfire Hurricane, which was John Brennan's. Brennan couldn't take it that he didn't get in the action. Okay? So when he heard about the dossier was being created, he said, oh man, we can create our own counterintelligence thing. But I'm not going to be caught. So I'm going to create an interagency group, and then I'm going to act like I don't really get reports from them when I'm actually driving it. John Brennan was driving this along with Clapper, along with Comey, and they all tried to hide underneath William Priestap, who says he doesn't know nothing, which is the director of the FBI's counterintelligence agency. And I told you, whoever the top person, the top lieutenant, he is the one doing the dirty work, and that's Peter Strzok. He did the dirty work in all of this. framing Carter Page, framing George Papadopoulos. Peter Strzok went and met with Stefan Halper. Peter Strzok went and met with Joseph Misthoff.
And he interviewed Hillary about her emails.
And they talked about pregnancy the whole time.
Listen, don't they have anybody at the FBI that actually can do the work that the FBI is supposed to do?
No, this is the way it was set up from the beginning. This is the way it works.
We need to
this
close
is
the
institutionalized.
FBI.
Yes,
we need to close it. Totally lock the doors. Everybody go home.
It's institutionalized that you get one patsy, one fall person, one fall guy in this case, Peter Strzok. But because he was hosing Lisa Page, and they admit that they were having a relationship, and he comes and has the nerve to tell Congress, don't ask me questions about my personal relationship with her. And don't you dare say that my personal political remarks to her have any bearing upon the work that we did together, even though we were using a government phone and we were supposed to be doing government work and our illicit relationship was illegal and using the phone the way we did was illegal. But we're never going to discuss what the content of the WikiLeaks are, what the breach of the DNC content was, what any of the content that was stolen by Imran Awan was. We're not going to discuss the content of Debbie Wasserman Schultz's laptop. We're not going to discuss the fact that the missing 33,000 emails never were missing. Christopher Wray admitted, because he doesn't want to go to jail, that he has multiple copies of those 33,000 missing emails in his office. They were there when he inherited it. He also admits that he has Imran Awan's laptop and all the laptops of Huma and Cheryl and all the others and their BlackBerries, all there.
Hey, Thomas, that was just the Peter S. We got a string of words here we got to take care of.
Well, I told you, this is huge, and it's going to take a long time. So, okay, that's Peter S.
13 Angry Democrats.
Now, Peter S. continued on into the special counsel until he was kicked off for the crimes that were found on his text messages, not to mention the crimes that were ignored, which were leaks, which was having sex with a married woman while you have a top secret security clearance, which is all the lies, which is the obfuscation, which is the cover-up of Hillary's email scandal, which is the cover-up of the Huma Abedin, one of the largest espionage thefts, 700,000 stolen State Department, in many cases, top secret, confidential, all kinds of classified documents completely ignored, sitting in that office. And who was the person gathering them all up and giving them to Comey? So Comey could say, I'm not going to look at those. Then I need to have a plausible deniability. I can't look at those. I'm just going to put them here in this secret closet that my brother built, because my brother got the contract, no-bid contract, to build the new FBI facility. And then he came in, and though he had no experience of building or no experience in organization, reorganized the entire FBI before Comey got there. Isn't that amazing? So the secret room, I call it, in Comey's office has all of this, folks. And the U.S. Marshals better go steal it from them and not tell them they're going to take it before it does get destroyed. Mr. President.
Well, isn't that Senior Executive Service Christopher Wray sitting in that office
yes.
now?
And all Senior Executive Service members are there to be obstructionists. U.S. Marshals need to be told to go over and arrest Christopher Wray for hiding this evidence when this evidence has been requested by the Congress, and he has it. He admits he has it. Therefore, he's committed a crime. A massive crimes. A crime for each and every one of those 33,000 missing emails. Each one of those, that's 33,000 crimes he committed. And by the way, he has the whole server. And by the way, he does not have the DNC server. Why not? When Comey in January of 2016 was asked by the DNC to help, and he was so anxious to help, he used Felix. He used every agent he had, Sergei Melgin, all of them, every single FBI, anything connected to Russia, he used all of his agents. Paid agents. Stefan Halpern, Christopher Steele, Felix, Sergei, all of them, okay? There's records that they were all paid. And if you look at the records of Fusion GPS, you'll see the crimes. And if you look at who Comey paid, you'll see the crimes. He wrote a check. He approved a check for $50,000 for the last installment of the Christopher Steele dossier, folks. And he wants to play like he didn't have anything to do with it. We have his approval, his written approval. $50,000 for a one-page piece of garbage that a fifth grader could have written. Anyone who ever reads that dossier that thinks that is real is an idiot. Okay. And that includes John McCain and everyone else who look at it. Now, the 13 Angry Democrats, these are now, if the rigged witch hunt is the fraud, because he just in the one below just called it a fraud, and it was a fraud during the election, and now what is it? It's a coup d'etat.
It's treason.
It's treason.
Treason, people.
So the rigged witch hunt is treasonous. That means the 13 Angry Democrats
are traitors.
And Robert Mueller are all traitors. They know the truth.
All right, but what are we going to do about it? We got these treasonous traitors. You know what's up there. What are we going to do about it?
I'm sorry, but I keep telling all you listeners and everyone out there, you have to have what you don't have. You have to have the most spiritual thing there is. Patience. You know you can't have love without patience.
I want patience right now. You know?
Exactly. You have to have patience. He cannot redo the DOJ and the FBI until he has been reelected.
That's right. We've got to wait for these midterms and...
No. 2020.
Okay.
He's got to win another term, and in that first and second year, he can clean house. He literally can use...
But in the meantime, we can make it very uncomfortable for these swamp people.
These rats. I love watching the rats scurry around. It's hysterically funny. All right, then the DNC server, we pointed out. What's on the DNC server? Folks, just look at the WikiLeaks and the breach. They're not hacks of the DNC server. They were breaches, and poor Seth Rich may have even been killed or at least been a patsy. It's possible Seth Rich is still alive. I don't know. But I do know that his folks are still suffering, and the things that I know that I can't tell you about, this goes on. This does not stop. Seth Rich does not stop. Seth Rich was undoubtedly the person who breached. The reason he breached is he saw the corruption. He saw both sides. He had just been asked, literally, by Hillary Clinton herself. I love it when Hillary goes to these IT people because she knows they all got to be corrupt. So she interviews them herself. So anyone, Imran Alwan, Hillary wouldn't have let Imran Alwan have access. Both the people who had access to the Democratic National Committee server had access to her server. The one guy who ran the DNC server ran her server. And Imran Alwan went over and became an advisor, which means he had access to the whole thing. When Seth Rich went from the election side, and he was a Bernie guy, he got really upset and he was going to quit, is what the story is told by his parents in the first versions, until certain agents came in, and now they have different versions, and now you don't hear him speaking at all. But the point is that Seth Rich knew what happened. He knew that the corruption in the primaries was real, and he saw the mechanism for it in the DNC server. He had been working on it, but until after the election, he didn't see the results, and he saw the 17 riggings that happened, which we know, which they were caught in. He also saw that the DNC server was closed down to Bernie's people. Why they cleaned up and got George Soros's notes to John Podesta and Hillary Clinton off of there. George Soros was running the DNC. What don't people know about that? George Soros paid completely for Obama's candidacy when he was a senator, chose him to be president, funded him with $2 billion each campaign. Oh, grassroots donations, nonsense. Look for the corruption. It's in the DNC server, both on the political side and on the donor side. So under their donor program, and Seth Rich had just been asked by Hillary Clinton to move over when he was upset about the primaries being lost in corruption to Bernie. And she says, look, I'm going to make you a very special person. I'm going to let you in to see the real corruption. This is how we get our money. He went in there. He wasn't in there but a minute. He took the breach, and he's either dead or gone. So that's the DNC server. That's the one Trump keeps mentioning. When he mentions the other server, he's mentioning Xavier Becerra's server that was in his office in the Congress that Imran Alwan used as his proxy server to stream 44 Democrats' secret information, all their passwords, everything, their iPads, their Blackberries, their computers, everything, all the information to their secret committees like the Intelligence Committee, Judiciary Committee, Armed Services Committee, doesn't matter. Imran was there. He never had security clearance, but they let him into a skiff. And he set up that proxy server. That's the other one Trump is talking about. That one now, even the police say, the investigators say it was stolen. But now the FBI says they have it. Isn't that sweet? It's probably in James Comey's office right there with Christopher Wray's other stack of evidence that he should go to jail for. So Hillary knew when she set up her server that it was illegal. She did that on purpose. It was pay to play. And if Huma gave permission, then you got to see the stuff through Huma's Gmail account, okay? It's real simple, folks. Why do you think her laptop is missing? Why do you think she had the insurance policy? Why do you think her husband noticed it and created his own folder of insurance policy, which were damnable documents against Hillary Clinton? Why do you think Huma and Anthony Weiner had on their laptop evidence that would show who Hillary Clinton truly is? And that's why Loretta Lynch stepped down. That's why Loretta Lynch threatened the New York Police Department again after all of this came through, when she was threatened by Comey. Comey threatened her, she threatened Comey, then she threatened the New York Police Department. And then they used the Eastern District of New York to go after them. And so you have so much collusion. And then who steps in? Don't forget, John Kerry, who got paid under the table for the Iran deal. He got paid under the table through his son Christopher Hines for his deal in Ukraine and in China. Of course, Iran has dirt on that deal, and they want to bring it out. We're beginning to see it. 2,500 Iranians were moved with special permission through the State Department into key positions in America. In other words, they allowed their spies to come and infiltrate here in America. 2,500 of them. They're here right now. Thank you, John Kerry. These are the kind of things that are going on. The Pakistani fraudster, we just talked about that. That's Imran Alwan. Another one of the largest espionage cases in history. They're not even looking at that. The set-up judge, the fake justice, Tanya Chutkan, they had to replace the judge so that they would get the right outcome. The right outcome is nobody's even looking at his crimes. They're going to let him walk. They put Manafort in solitary confinement for literally what is literally a tax evasion crime that George Soros does every single day of his life. And George Soros has never been charged for the same crime, the only crime that Manafort actually committed. Will Imran Alwan go to jail, the Pakistani fraudster? No, he's not going to jail. He's going to walk. Uranium One, we told you that the second we saw who the judge was.
Make sure to include Jeff Sessions on this Uranium One discussion.
Rat Jeff Sessions is now, he's part of the gang because he's complicit. Sorry, Jeff.
He was always part of the gang.
Unless you put blinders on, plugs in your ears, when you took your office and you never found your office and you don't have a telephone, you've never spoken to anyone, you are a criminal like the rest of them because you're covering for them. Sorry, you got part of the crime. But why Uranium One? We know you were involved in Uranium One, Mr. Sessions, and we know how you covered for it. You were on 3 committees that CFIUS had to have the approval for. And those crimes were so obvious, and you knew of those crimes, and you knew of the cover-up, and you knew that it was Andrew McCabe for 10 years kept the Uranium One covered up. You knew of Hillary's payoffs. Everyone knows of them, $145 million overtly through the companies that got the benefit of Uranium One, as well as APCO and Jonathan Weiner's own words that he went on multiple television shows and told the truth about you, Hillary, and told your theft and told what you're really stealing and how you steal it. Hillary is Uranium One because that was one of Bill's deals, but she was in the downline. She wasn't even the Frank Juster payoff of $200 million and $100 million from Carlos Slim, and then half of the income from Goldcorp for the rest of its existence, and it's the 3rd largest gold company. So Uranium One was worth untold amounts of money because if you look closely, it shows that Russia controls our uranium, and now Britain is in a battle to try to control our enriched uranium in this country. We're not even in control of it. We've gone over this before. When you look into Uranium One, it goes so deep you can't even believe it. We've talked about John Podesta. He's basically the most corrupt person in Washington because he has all the dirt. He's not only by his very evidenced circumstantially by the fact that he loves art that is all pedophilia, and he loves torture because he has sculptures of the way Jeffrey Dahmer put people, those horrible things in the face of the earth, he puts on the wall and smiles and shows people when they come to his house.
Well, now, don't mix up the art that's also in his brother's house.
And his brother. They're
Yes.
both horrible people. That's the reason Hillary Clinton took her orders from him. And who does he take his orders from? George Soros, who is a person who doesn't mind killing millions of people for
money.
money.
I keep saying this. George Soros has to be protected by somebody on this planet to do the evil he does. And I'm saying it's Queen Elizabeth that protects this man.
We know that Sir Malik Brown, that he is on and was on the initial founding of the Open Society Foundation and Tides Foundation. So he is George Soros'
And he's another Privy Council member.
And George Soros is connected to many of these Privy Council members. And yes, Soros had to have worked with them. And as you pointed out the other day, being an economist as you are, when George Soros almost broke the Bank of England by currency manipulation, you said, well, surely the Queen was in on that. And I thought about that and said, yes, that would be Richard A. Walker.
Richard
David
C.
Walker.
Oh,
Sorry.
David Walker.
David
Yeah.
Walker, the Queen's man in the Bank of England. They would have known that Soros was
they
doing
did.
this. And so I guarantee you the
They
Privy
made money
Council,
too.
the Privy Council members and the inside of this would have been right along with Soros. So
Because
look
the Queen
closely.
doesn't really care about the Brits either. She's in on it for herself.
Not only that, the actions that were taken were probably taken to make sure that the currency manipulation would be effective. That's what Soros does. He goes in, he weakens economies through currency manipulations, through lies, through non-government organizations that get young people, convince them that they can get free stuff by going out on the street and being violent, and then they get them in these revolutions to go. They don't even know why they're out there. It's like interview anybody who was out there in Portland in the riot. Ask them why they were there. They did. You see some of those interviews? They don't know what planet they're on, let alone why they're there. They're there because they don't know. They thought maybe they get on TV. So anyway, the point is that what George Soros uses weak people. And the European Union is a George Soros creation. It's the European Union of George Soros. And he is, of course, very much connected to people in the Privy Council, and they don't do anything without George Soros' permission. Let's remember, right now Britain is going to have to pay their part of the $60 to $80 billion tax George Soros just put on the European Union. In 1 week, Angela Merkel and the European Union went from, bring all the migrants in, there can be no borders, open border. George Soros told us, open border, open border. Then they took a vote. 28 member states said, no more migrants, kick them all out, because we just did an analysis. In 5 years, there'll be no more Europe, there'll be no more nations here. We're looking at our own demise. We invited it in, kick them out. They made that vote. 1 week later, they agreed, after George Soros had come out publicly and said that he demands that Europe simply pay a tax, $60 to $80 billion a year, and that asylum centers be set up on the northern coasts of African countries, and that they will simply do the asylum checks there and then put them on boats and send them over. Why did that happen? Because what we told you from the beginning, all of the boats being used to bring those invaders over were paid for by George Soros. And Angela Merkel, we now found out, took taxpayer dollars from Germany and bought a pirate. These are pirate ships flying under false Dutch flags, being paid for by German taxpayers and George Soros, bringing the invaders over, not to Germany, the only country that invited them over. Remember, Angela Merkel started this. They didn't bring them in ships to Germany. No, they brought them to Greece. They brought them to Italy. They brought them to everywhere but Malta. And the minute that Malta, they said they were going to land one of these ships at Malta, it was all over, wasn't it, folks? Well, why does that little teensy tiny island control the invasion of Europe? Because George Soros, of course, is a Knight of Malta. The Queen is a Knight of Malta. All of the current monarchy and black monarchy, in other words, the monarchy that have stepped down under tutelary heads, as well as the richest people in the world and the most political war hawks in the world, are all parts of the Knight, are all members of the Knight of Malta, and they take a vow to the Pope of fealty. Not one single migrant invader entered Malta. Not one single immigrant refugee who Pope Francis, the lying Jesuit Pope kisses the feet of these migrants. Not one of them lives in the Vatican City. Not one of them ever spent a night in the Vatican City. Isn't that interesting? And they have so much power that those two little teensy places, the Vatican City and Malta, have so much power they can stop the invasion, or basically you could say Francis has supported the invasion more than any other person on the face of the earth besides George Soros. He gets paid for every single refugee. The Pope loves refugees because he gets paid for every single one of them, but he doesn't open his doors to them. So anyway, I got a little carried away there at the end, but I'll finish by saying it's a Democrat con job. Take the C from con. Take the N from con, move it over there to Democrat, and you have demon rat. It is a demon rat coup. A con job? Yeah. But when he became president, and he's being very nice because President Trump is a very nice person compared to me, I call it what it is. This is a coup d'etat. These people need to be rounded up and put in Gitmo. Period. But he's doing it better. First, he's going to restructure from the ground up with public support. He got elected in a landslide. He overthrew their election system scams and their election machines, okay? Now he's redoing everything. There's nothing he's not redoing. He doesn't need them. He doesn't even need the shadow government to go away. He's just going around them. You know how many SES members are involved in those, should have been involved in the trade deals that he's doing by himself? Tens of thousands. There are, remember, 2.5 million federal employees who support the executive office. There's 4.5 actually, but 2 million of them are National Guard and the military. 4.5 million people work for Trump. Okay?
Well,
they need to realize what's going on.
Working for Trump. They're there to obstruct Trump.
That's what I'm saying. They don't need to be there. He just went around tens of thousands of people because he's saying, who are the idiots who created these tariffs? We're going to have no tariffs. We're not going to have any blocks to trade. You call this free trade? I call it stupid trade. That's what he calls it. Stupid trade. That's 10,000 jobs he won't need. When he gets reelected, in the second year, he can literally say goodbye to a million and a half federal employees that work directly for him. And guess what? He will have created jobs for them in the real jobs for them so they can go out and get jobs that they may have to work for it, though, for the first time in their life instead of being a federal employee. So anyway, the Democrat con job. This is Obama. When he says Democrat con job, I'm not being crazy by telling you that he has just now point blank said, this is Obama's coup d'etat. This is a war. And until the special counsel is over, until the DOJ and FBI give the documents to their oversight committees in Congress, and until some people actually have to meet some of my appointed judges in non-fake justice situations in federal courts, then we can really start to see after that, when he turns it all around slowly, that they will all no longer have jobs. And he's going to create laws like this. If you're a lobbyist, if you had a federal job, you could never be a lobbyist again. If you had a D.C. federal job, never be a lobbyist. If you were ever in the FBI, you can never work in a corporate intelligence agency. If you were ever in the NSA again, NSA, the CIA, no corporate intelligence. He simply will have to make executive orders, and all of these people and their musical chairs routine going between banks, hedge funds, corporate intelligence, terrible law firms, and other corrupt organizations like the Crown Agents, OPIC, USAID, Serco, and all of its subsidiaries, SCL, all these companies. He's simply going to write executive orders that say we are not doing business with enemies.
Is it going to be able to do something with these election rigging machines like Smartmatic and InterCivic? These
Period.
are all, these are all tied up with Mitt Romney.
Oh, yes.
George Soros, Malik Brown. We need to have some kind of executive order that says that these machines, it has been proven that they are being rigged by foreign influencers or whatever. We have to not use them.
So as far as elections are concerned, yes, we're still going to reveal all of that in some audios we're going to do in the next week or so. And you can look, Truth News Headlines is revealing the absolute bombshells about that what we want to do, and President Trump can simply sign an executive order saying, I have found fraud and corruption in the election system. We go back to paper, and we go back to one vote, one person, and we go back to an e-verification that you are a citizen. We want to see your I-9. If you do not have a statement that you are a U.S. citizen or proof, you cannot vote. And you only get one vote. Sorry, MS-13, you don't get to vote 42 times. So what's going to happen? Simple. Executive orders. He does not need the Congress to change the people that he works for. That's why there could be no obstruction of justice. Comey worked for him. So what are we seeing here? We're seeing that Trump is beginning to clean up the swamp, but when he gets reelected a second time, we will see the massive changes that are going to happen.